Hey everybody, thanks for listening. This is the Matter of Life and Maiden podcast of the Beast. I'm Joe Labriola.
And I'm Matt Wagner.
And today we're going to continue from what we talked about last time, which was the Powerslave album. Because Powerslave is such a gargantuan behemoth to discuss and talk about, we decided to break the podcast into two parts. So this is Powerslave Part 2.
Yeah, I don't think we could have justified just doing a 50-minute episode on Powerslave.
It's impossible with everything, and really, where Part 1 focused on the album itself, the writing, the artwork. We're going to talk about that, and probably little bits and pieces on this podcast too, just referring back to it and talking about how the artwork is portrayed in the Live After Death show primarily, and how that production kind of really blew Maiden up and made every stage show from World Slavery Tour onward a pinnacle of their live performances. And then what we're going to do is kind of just shed some light on our personal experiences with our own little Live After Death show, which was a Somewhere Back in Time tour that we got to see live twice.
We do a little story time later.
Yeah, a little story time about our...
Everybody grab their blankies.
Yeah. Grab your blankie, put some headphones on, make sure you listen to Powerslave.
Yeah.
And we'll get everything situated. So, let's start with Live After Death, man. What do you think?
Live After Death is almost as important as the Powerslave album to Maiden's popularity. This live album took them to the next level. It was similar to the band Kiss. Maiden is better live than they are on their albums, except for Maiden is a bunch of posers like Kiss is. But anyway, the Live After Death, video and that tour just took them to the next level. They have so much energy and passion live, and they mix that with unparalleled production value during this tour. There had been nothing like this out of any other Maiden tour before the World Slavery Tour.
I agree with you. I mean, you're talking about stage set design in particular, and that's kind of what I want to focus on this. And this is kind of touching on, my experience with it. Because, like I said earlier in previous podcasts, Live After Death, the DVD came out, and I watched it a ton. I listened to the record before, too. But I never got to see what it looked like.
Well, I just kind of want to put things in a frame of reference, because of in the modern YouTube era, we kind of get to see all these videos of Iron Maiden. You can go right now on YouTube and look up the Legacy of the Beast tour, and you'll literally see hundreds of videos, great quality of the tour nowadays. Transport yourself back into 1984. There is no YouTube. There's no internet. I know some of you that are younger might not believe this, but there wasn't an internet at one time.
Absolutely. And even with us, in 2008, when we saw the Somewhere Back in Time tour, we still didn't have... that was 10 years ago. That was in 2008, yeah. So we got some YouTube stuff and some quality, but it was nowhere near as...
Bootleg was a bit of an art, even back then. You needed the equipment. You needed to get in there. You needed the spot. It was very much like I said, it was like an art. It was like a profession. There were professional bootleggers that went into concerts and recorded it. Now I can walk in literally with better equipment in my pocket on my cell phone than those guys had just 10 years ago.
Exactly. And it's something that,
I don't remember really watching that many videos on YouTube before the Somewhere Back in Time tour. There wasn't that much access.
There wasn't anything that we could really do. Me personally, I don't even think I had a cell phone. So
I didn't have a cell phone, I don't think, 10 years ago.
So that just goes to show you that we didn't even care about that kind of stuff back then. It wasn't important. But
yeah, I was just putting things in perspective here. That was 10 years ago. We didn't have that access. 30 years ago, that was Back to the Future stuff. These people, the only pictures you got of this band when you bought the album and looked at the album covers.
Yep.
You didn't have videos of these people. So when they recorded Live After Death, and say you were already a Maiden fan, maybe you hadn't been to a live show, you don't know what the live act is all about. You don't probably have access to live albums because of the Beast over Hammersmith, recording was not widely available.
Neither was Live in Dortmund for Peace of Mind.
Exactly. This was the first taste that 99% of Maiden fans got of their live show. And that's to put Live After Death in perspective of how huge that would have been when you're an Iron Maiden fan and you pop that VHS in and you hit play and you see this performance on stage. You had to have had your mind literally blown. It had to have been something to see, really.
And we're talking about 1985, and Matt brings up a good point. When I saw it in 2008, when they re-released it on DVD, my mind was blown. And that's one of the reasons why I became a huge
that was
fan.
20 years after the fact, and the production still held up.
Yeah, still held up, significantly. Blown away, and then I would just get even more blown away because we talked about the production values. You're talking about stage set. Let's talk about that, right? Peace of Mind had okay production. Number of the Beast had okay production. Not too much on Killers, not too much on the Iron Maiden album. In Peace of Mind, they did have some stage set stuff. They had a walk-on Eddie with a straight jacket. They had a big Eddie that came out of the back with, lobotomized head and stuff like that. They had that kind of stuff. But this here was a complete overhaul of the stage set.
Yeah, I remember at the end of the Peace of Mind tour, the very last show they played, they knocked the Eddie down. The Peace of Mind Eddie that had been lobotomized, they ripped his head open and they ripped his brains out. And I think Dave was beating him with his guitar, and that was kind of a symbolic gesture that they killed this former Iron Maiden stage set. That was it was getting to the cutting edge. They had these Eddies, like Joe said, they were getting there. They had a little spice, not much, just a little bit extra on their stage set, and then the World Slavery Tour comes. I mean, even if you had seen an Iron Maiden show before, you had to have been I don't even know, I don't know how to describe how that had to have been.
It had to be absolutely,
euphoric.
Enthralling, just, euphoric. You have every single attention to detail that they could think of is placed in this stage set. The cover sleeve is about ancient Egypt. On the stage set, they have ancient Egyptian ruins, around Nico's drum set. The whole stage looks like it's a ancient Egyptian ruin.
Even on the concert floor, or the stage floor, they had the Eye of Horus. You couldn't even see that unless you were sitting up above them. So even that attention to detail was amazing.
Exactly. Not only that, you got the sarcophaguses on the stage with the red eyes that light up with a kind of Eddie face in them. You have enhanced pyrotechnics, enhanced lighting show. It's just phenomenal.
You had the blow up Eddies.
You got the Eddie that comes out who was on. I think he was on. I forget what kind of springs or something. But his hands were these huge springs that they used from a machine, and he was gigantic that came out of the back, wrapped in bandages.
Yeah.
Just a huge Eddie would just come out, like a pyramid door would open up almost, and he would come out. And
Mummy Eddie, yeah.
A huge mummy out there. And then they had the walk-on Eddie, who was a mummy too. And, just the production, phenomenal. Then you pop, like we said, then you pop that DVD in, you see all that shit, and then Matt and I get to go experience it in 2008, and it's the exact same stage set that's on the DVD from 1985. It's wow.
It's just, that stage set just updated for the 21st century. It was, do you want to go through our story about the first time we've seen Iron Maiden together?
Yeah, man, go ahead. Kick it off.
This was good. I think the best place to start would have been the end of the A Matter of Life and Death tour. They streamed the last concert they did in England, and in the middle of the show, Bruce comes out and he starts talking, and he says that they have a lot of work to do. This is the last show of the tour, and they got a lot of work to do because it takes a really long time to build pyramids. And to me and Joe, this was set us off. We're oh my god, they're gonna do a Live After Death, Powerslave kind of tour. That they had already done a history tour a few years earlier, the early days, but this was the good stuff of this is the repeat of the best tour that Iron Maiden ever did. The best production that they've ever done. And me and Joe were like stoked. And then they finally announced the tour dates, and we saw the first leg of the tour. They played a show in New York City, and at the Izod Center, we're like, we have to go. We just had to go. And we were, how old were we, like 20? 21,
22 almost.
Yeah. And this is like the first big long trip we ever took, because we're from central Pennsylvania, and New York City is probably about a 6-7 hour drive if everything goes right.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing tour. And I remember.
Do you remember like we actually like counted how many days we'd have left to see Iron Maiden? It was like 97 days until we get to see Iron Maiden, and the next time we hang out, we'd be like, 78 days. Like, it was like Christmas. We were like counting the days down.
It was amazing, and
this was the most excited, most enthusiastic I had ever been about Iron Maiden. Probably, maybe to this day, the most obsessed with the whole band.
Same here. And I think another thing to just touch on that, the artwork for Live After Death was so like paramount, with Eddie busting out of the grave. Like Matt said earlier, they just killed Eddie for peace of mind.
We didn't even talk about that. The Live After Death art,
exactly.
As good as any album they have ever done.
And what I wanted to touch on that was, you got Eddie busting out of the grave. He's back to life now. Obviously, Live After Death, hence the name. Yeah. They killed him at the end of the show. Now he's back to life. He was a mummy. You get it? He's back from the dead. The mummy Eddie's back from the dead. He's alive again.
You got that H.P. Lovecraft.
H.P. Lovecraft saying, fantastic. He's back with the white hair. But now it's cool because he's lobotomized, but his hair's back too. So he has the little thing up in his head that is shooting electricity out. There's some yellow flames around him. There's a gravestone. There's a reaper in the background.
That color too. The color on the album is amazing.
The blue.
It's one of my favorites.
Blue. And then to see that blue, right? To see that dark blue. This is the point I wanted to bring up. Why I brought this up. Because when the Somewhere Back in Time tour poster came out, they have the Live After Death Eddie on the front. It's basically the Powerslave cover. It's the Powerslave cover. It's a pyramid. It has the exact same pyramid in the back with the cobra around the glowing pyramid at the top, except this time it has that blue darkness of Live After Death, and it has the Live After Death Eddie in the front with bandages wrapped around him, hinting at that this is going to be a tour about Powerslave. And then instead of having two Anubis statues on the side where the Pharaoh Eddie is in the middle, there's the Somewhere in Time Eddie on the one side, and there's the Seventh Son Eddie on the other side. And it's just like, what the fuck are they going to do? This is going to be about Powerslave, Somewhere in Time, and Seventh Son. This is going to be an amazing show. And seeing that artwork is another reason I was like, holy shit, this is amazing.
Yeah, the Somewhere Back in Time artwork was just incredible. The mix between Powerslave and Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son, and they just played with all these ideas about they had like Joe said, they had like an Egyptian statue of the Somewhere in Time Eddie. It's just amazing.
Just the attention, to use the same color. The color of that is the color of Live After Death. The album is the same color as Somewhere in Time. It's that darkish purplish blue color.
Yeah, and you're a huge art person, so
and I loved it.
When you saw it,
when I saw it, dude, I was like, dude, and I just said everything that I just said on this podcast to Matt when I saw it 10 years ago. I was like, dude, it's the Live After Death color, it's the Eddie, it's the.
This has added to our excitement to seeing the live show, and like when that day finally came, we got in the car and we were heading to New York, and Joe was going about 110 miles an hour up to New York. We left at like 10 in the morning. We got to New York like a little after 3. So it took us 5 hours to do like a 7-hour drive or an 8-hour drive. We just flew up there. I can't tell you how like amped I was for that show. And just to be there for it, just the anticipation of it was like incredible. Just like you said, like the artwork, the set list, just everything was just building up. We hadn't really, like I said, like YouTube it was around, but there wasn't a lot on YouTube of the show. And if there was stuff, it was really like poor quality. Your good bootleggers weren't putting their stuff on YouTube anyway. So we didn't really know exactly 100% sure what to expect. We saw pictures of the stage, and that was about it. So like, we get up there to the Izod Center, and all the fans are just like stoked. They know this is special. This is the height of probably the reunion since the band got back with Bruce and Adrian. This was the pinnacle. This whirlwind tour of the world, and wherever they played, 20-something dates on the plane. And yeah, we didn't even talk about the plane. Ed Force One. Yeah, go ahead, Joe. Talk about the plane.
Ed Force One. I mean, Matt just said all the stuff that, this is the height of them at the pinnacle now. Before Powerslave was the pinnacle that made them internationally recognized, well, you know what? They become internationally recognized again a second time over. Bruce Dickinson, they get a giant plane. Bruce had an idea that why do we have
a jumbo jet.
A jumbo jet. Why do we have to take vans and buses and all this stuff from place to place, which they still do, but they didn't want to catch consecutive flights over and over again. So they got their own private jumbo jet, put all their gear on stuff on there, loaded it up there.
And even freaking painted it with Eddie on it.
Painted it with Eddie on it, put Iron Maiden on the side, and to top it off, Bruce Dickinson's the fucking pilot of the plane.
Like, how badass metal is that Bruce is flying the jumbo jet from continent to continent?
It's fucking unbelievable. And cherry on top of that, if that wasn't even it, this is a nostalgic thing for Matt and I, because it's a personal connection we talked about in the first episode of the Powerslave podcast when we were talking about Powerslave, how we have such a personal connection with the album. This is another reason why we have a personal connection. We just talked about how Live After Death set the tone for everybody when they popped that in. They saw the stage set, they were like, this is fucking amazing. They come out with a basically updated version of Live After Death, which is 20 years later, which is the Somewhere Back in Time Flight 666 DVD. And like I said, to top it off, Rime the Ancient Mariner, my personal favorite song, the song that they chose to put on the fucking DVD was the one from the show that we were at. So it's like, holy fuck, the Izod Arena show that we went to.
This was our Live After Death. This was like being at Long Beach in 1984.
Exactly.
We go into the concert. I don't even remember who was the opener. Do they even have an opener? I don't even remember.
Lauren Harris?
Was she the opener?
Yeah, Steve's daughter.
Oh, well.
Steve's daughter. Well,
yeah, I don't even remember anything about that. The only thing I remember is, obviously they play Transylvania, and that's the signal, everybody get their asses to the seats. So everybody comes in, and the place is chanting Maiden, super loud. And there's probably 20,000 people in the Izod Center. And we're sitting, on the right side of the stage, and we're, on the bleachers, and we're, looking down on the stage. We have 100% view of the stage, but we're still close. So we're, looking down on Davey's side and Adrian's side. So we have, obviously, that's the side we want to be on, because Dave and Adrian are, our favorites of the band. They were the guys we emulated ourselves, our guitar playing after. And so they're playing Transylvania, and all of a sudden, the lights go down, and you hear that plane. Churchill comes on, we shall go on to the end. And, I'm getting, super chills down my body. And it's, probably the most excited I've ever been at, a live event in my life. This was, what you dreamt of being an Iron Maiden fan, seeing this show. This, like I said, this is our Live After Death. This was like being in Long Beach. That's how excited we were. And then you hear that Aces High intro tape start, and you're getting real excited. And then boom, they hit the stage, and me and Joe just stare.
It was amazing.
We don't move. We're just completely besides ourselves of what we're actually seeing. I'm I look at Joe, and Joe's just his jaw is literally open, and he's just staring at the stage I can't believe what we're seeing right now. We are seeing the Live After Death show live, and the production value 10 out of 10, over the top, is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like Matt said. It was just. Just fortunate. And you're watching that show, and you get all this. And we talked about on the first episode of Powerslave how when they play Rime the Ancient Mariner, there's this camaraderie and this feel that the band just loves playing together. Yeah. They love being musicians. They want to show you what they're capable of. It's like this transcendence almost. And you felt I know we both did. I mean, I can speak for him at this point. I know I'm speaking, but we both felt that transcendent, just like euphoria.
There, not only was Rime and the Ancient Mariner like the height of that show, it was the jewel of the show. Everybody knew it. They haven't played Rime in 20 years live. Everybody knew that was the height of the show. It is without a doubt the best moment that I've had at a live concert event is seeing Rime and the Ancient Mariner live.
Same there. Best live moment I've ever seen. And the difference between the 85 version when they play Rime is, like we talked about, the stage set and the production is over the top. This time they got fog machines coming out. Yeah. Bruce comes out in this cloak. He actually looks like death because it's a line from the poem. Life and death. They throw their dice to the crew. Gambling for these sailors' lives or whatever. So
he's like literally an embodiment.
He's the embodiment of death. And then also, if that wasn't amazing enough, there's a freaking ship that comes down from the ceiling.
Yeah, the lighting rig comes
broken
down.
in half. The lighting rig is in the shape of a ship that comes down. There's like the ship just floating. And
just sitting here thinking, like, Iron Maiden doesn't have to do that stuff. They can save a lot of money. They just come out and they do the same tour over and over again. And they just do the bare minimum production. We'd probably still go see them. We'd still, buy their new albums. They do that because they want to give the fans something a little extra live. They want something different than they've seen before. Like I said, even if you had seen the Live After Death show, like Joe was talking about, they plussed it. They added those little details to it.
And that's another thing that we talk about in pretty much every podcast we've done, just the integrity of the band and what they do. They don't only do it to please the fans. They genuinely do it because they enjoy it. They enjoy what they do. They've never strayed from not enjoying that. If they didn't want to put a ship in the background and bring it down and have Bruce come out dressed up like death, they wouldn't do it. But they do it because they love what they do. They're very proud of the stuff that they've created. They're very proud of sharing that with people.
Yeah, I guarantee you that Bruce has enough money. If he just wanted to retire, he could. He's multi-millionaire. You can go look up his net worth on Google. It's over $100 million. He's not doing these shows just for the money. He's doing it because he really, really does enjoy it.
He does enjoy it.
And I know the rest of the band does too.
And I think it's a cool concept. I know this is kind of like future talking here, but the man had cancer too. A lot of people who suffer from that kind of disease pretty much hanging up. I'm done. I'm not going to do anything ever again. I want to enjoy the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I have enough money.
Not only did he have cancer, he had throat cancer.
Throat cancer. He's a singer.
Yeah.
So he's probably thinking like, oh shit, I can't do it. I mean, but he's out there still doing it. I mean, it just goes to show you that they give a shit about you as a fan. They care about you as a fan. And I know Matt has brought up Kiss plenty of times, and compared them to the fan bases between them. Kiss doesn't give a shit about you.
I don't even Kiss is the only kind of thing I could compare Iron Maiden to, and it's not really even that close. It's
Iron Maiden is Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is.
There are no fans in music in general that care more about their band than Iron Maiden.
I wanted to even touch on that is Iron Maiden isn't even a band. I mean, to some people, like Matt and I, they're a band, but for him and I, they transcend that. I mean, I remember one time when I quote Matt, and I say this kind of just paraphrasing him here. Matt and I have discussed multiple things over the years. We're both historians. We talk about history constantly. We talk about film a lot. We talk about books and literature, things like that a lot. We talk about Maiden a lot. Matt one time said, I've been passionate with things. This was a couple of years ago. I was in grad school. Matt came over. Or I just graduated grad school or something like that. Matt came over. And he said, I've been passionate about a lot of things in my life. But he said, the one thing that I've been the most passionate about for over a decade now, and studying them and learning about them and just understanding what they're about, is Iron Maiden. So to say they're just a band for us is kind of like a shortcoming. And
it's been 13, 14 years that we've liked Iron Maiden. It's never. I mean, I've gone through phases where I probably haven't listened to them as much as I have at other times, but there has been no time that they weren't my favorite band, that they weren't a thing that I knew a lot about, and I knew I always was looking for this new album news or that new tour news or something I'd get on the internet and look up and just waiting for, any news to come out. Maybe Steve had an interview and he gave some hints that there might be a new album. We'd all read that. And I text Joe. I'm like, did you see, Steve said they might come up with a new album at the end of next year. And it's a year and a half away and we're still excited about it.
Just obsessed. And we named this podcast A Matter of Life and Maiden. But really, that's just to draw people in. Really, it's just a matter of life because for us, they're really a part of our life.
I mean, that podcast was a play on words. We said it before that you can use Iron Maiden as, a metaphor for life. And the things that they sing about and the things that they talk about are really what me and Joe, live. We like literature. We like music. We like history. We like all these things that the band sings and talks about. And it wasn't that we didn't like this stuff before we listened to Iron Maiden, but they just took what we believed and what we thought about. They played it. And that's how we connected with them. There's nothing, like Joe said, in my life that I've been as passionate about as Iron Maiden. There's nothing that I have consistently enjoyed and listened to and not got sick of like Iron Maiden.
I'm in the exact same boat.
And just to tie it all together, this Somewhere Back in Time tour that we went to see just encapsulated that. And that was probably, like I said, the height of our fandom of the band. That's the most excited I had ever been to go see somebody.
And based on that Somewhere Back in Time tour that we saw them on, those two shows that we saw them on that tour, ever since then we've been going to live shows whenever they're around. As often as we can. Yeah,
it made us go see 5 more of them. And we actually saw the exact same show, a couple months later when they came back and they did a full tour of the U.S. We went to Cleveland, Ohio, and we saw the exact same show. And it was, I would have seen them, 8 more times if I could have. I would have followed them around the country. The show is just incredible. Look at the songs that they played on the Somewhere Back in Time tour. It was hit after hit, classic after classic. They started with Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Revelations. What do they play after that?
Revelations, they're playing The Trooper. They're playing Wasted Years, Number of the Beast, Can I Play with Magnets, Rime the Ancient Mariner, Powerslave, Heaven Can Wait, Run to the Hills, Fear the Dark, Iron Maiden, and then the encore is Moonchild, The Clairvoyant, and they close with Hallowed Be Thy Name.
Freaking the live version of Moonchild is disgusting. They actually play, instead of having that tape recording of the intro and the synths going off, they actually play the whole thing from Davey playing the acoustic through it, and it was incredible to see live. Davey solo, I guess we'll talk about this in a couple of episodes. Davey solo during Moonchild is one of his best.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And just to see that live is just blown away. And every other song, every song on that whole concert was just incredible. Heaven Can Wait. Just a classic. Another classic.
That setlist, man. We talk about it frequently. It's untouchable right now. No matter what they do, it's going to be hard to beat that setlist. And you can just see that from the artwork. Yeah,
it was the best setlist we ever seen. It was the best concert we ever seen. It's the best production we have ever seen. It's the best artwork we'd ever gotten to see. The best they've ever sounded. Bruce sounded incredible during the show. He screamed during Run to the Hills, and it kind of scared everybody. Everybody was
just shocked.
It was so loud that it was wow. They were just on fire that night.
And another thing, they're so knowledgeable. We were there just shocked, and Bruce kept saying, "Scream for me, Meadowlands!" And I'm what are the fucking Meadowlands? And then we realized, oh shit, the Meadowlands are New Jersey and
It's what he used to call it back in the World Slavery Tour.
Yeah, it was what it was called in the 1980s, the Meadowlands.
He said the Izod, sounded dumb, and it sounded
it made no sense. It was named after a pair of underwear.
Yeah, he was making fun of it. So he's screw it. I'm saying, Meadowlands. And he did. And, there's so many memories of that show. And then he does that, intro to Rime the Ancient Mariner about, this is what not to do when a bird shits on you.
And he says it. He's like, I'm going to say the same thing that I said back in 1984, 85. This is what not to do when a bird shits on you. And then they fucking play it. Just like I said, it was like you were watching Live After Death. It was like I was watching the DVD I just bought a month before.
It's like you got in a time machine, you went back 20 years, and you were at the World Slavery Tour. Except it was probably better. Because they had the songs from Somewhere in Time and Seven Son, and you had all those classics, and
the production was better.
Honestly, Bruce sounds better now. He did not sound real great on Live After Death.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Another reason why he didn't sound too good on Live After Death is because they toured 187 shows, and it was the last tour of the show. I mean, we talked about it on the first episode of this podcast, talking about Powerslave Part 1, that they did 187 shows. You're singing Rime the Ancient Mariner 187 times.
Aces High?
Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight. You're singing... What else is on the Live After Death tour? I mean, you're singing songs like The Trooper. You're singing Powerslave, Hallowed Be Thy Name, Iron Maiden, Run of the Hills. I mean, you're singing that stuff.
Not easy songs to sing on your best day.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're talking about it earlier. They played Phantom of the Opera a couple times and dropped it. They played 22 Acacia Avenue a couple times and dropped it. But, I mean, the guy's singing in this high register, and he still sounds fucking amazing on Live After Death, even though he's not, like, the greatest. I mean, it's the last show of 187.
Another thing that's, like, pretty incredible to me is the age of the band. Bruce is, 26 during this tour? 25? He's really, really young.
Something like that. He was born in 58, so...
Yeah, he's like 26. I mean, and he's doing this, like, world tour, and he's doing, like, 180-something shows, and the guy got burned out. By the end of the tour, when they do Live After Death, the guy is completely burned out. He said, like, during the history part 2 on the Iron Maiden DVD, he talks about it. Like, he said, like, you, like, sit there and you're like, how could a rock star, spend all this money on getting, like, curry, and there he was, spending like thousands of dollars to go get, because he wanted to have curry. And like, you start thinking like weird thoughts when you're out on the road that long. And that's what happened to Bruce. And you're talking about a very stable, smart, intelligent man. And the road just ground him to dust. And if that could happen to Bruce, it could happen to any of us.
Exactly. And I think that's another thing, if you're looking at parallels here, how they kind of manage that now in the modern day, because they got the jumbo jet and everything now. Everything's more efficient. You watch interviews and documentaries where they talk about now they don't have to go through so much security like they did back in the day. In '85, they played a show in where was that they had to go through all that security? It's the height of the Cold War.
Oh, it's Poland.
Went through Poland.
Poland was the first show on the tour. It's the first time they ever took the full. Like anybody, I think, had ever taken their full stage set, and they went to Poland, which was Behind the Iron Curtain.
There you go, Behind the Iron Curtain. That's what the documentary is called, Behind the Iron Curtain.
Well, there you go. I didn't even know that, but there you go.
Behind the Iron Curtain, and then you got these guys with armed machine guns and rifles standing outside because it's like obviously communism.
Just another thing to say about Iron Maiden, and that I think Rod said that they probably lost money doing that, just from the security, the money they had to pay to get in there, bringing the whole tour set and stage with them. But I think, like, they wanted to do it because it was the right thing to do. They gave Poland a taste of what freedom is like, and freedom sounds a lot like Iron Maiden.
Exactly. I mean, they have a song that they play live, 2 Minutes to Midnight. We just talked about that, which is basically poking fun at the people who are responsible for causing nuclear wars and sending kids off to war, and they're over there in a communist country singing about communism and why it's bad. I mean,
like the song 2 Minutes to Midnight it's a song about freedom, because it talks about all government and how that they were playing with everybody, the communists and the capitalists, and how we were all just kind of like caught in the middle of it. And Iron Maiden cares about people. They don't just care about people from England. And they don't just care about Europeans. They care about people from South America. They go to India. They go to Asia. They don't have to do that. I don't think they're making a whole ton of money playing shows in India. Just from, like, flying over there halfway around the world. They do it because they think it's the right thing to do.
They're a very liberal band, very liberating. Like Matt said,
Yeah.
they're very liberal.
19th century liberal.
Yeah, 19th century liberals. This idea of freedom and equality is really paramount throughout all their stuff, and I think that's a good point because they're very knowledgeable about the world and they understand a lot of things.
Yeah, whether that's like freedom from political freedom, freedom from religious ideology. Steve and the rest of the band, I know for sure, have that feeling that people ought to be free. And, they have other songs in their catalog. The Clans band's about
freedom.
Yeah, it's just not about Scottish independence. It's about freedom in general. And they go and they play that song in South America. And, like Bruce says during the Rock in Rio, he's like, it's a song about freedom, which, is something familiar to you all, but it sometimes is not. And, when he sings that song, it's not even, it was a Blaze era song. And he sings it with such passion. And he believes it when he sings it.
Yeah, I mean, freedom is a paramount staple throughout their things, too. We never really talked about that before. I think World Slavery Tour and Powerslave really give us a chance to talk about that because it showcases that at a very, very high level. Their freedom to do what they want to do, their freedom to go tour the world, like we said, places that other bands wouldn't normally go or venture to.
Powerslave is a bit of a play on words, too. Like, being that powerful and being a slave at the same time.
Yep. Being a slave to the power of death, the fact that you might as well enjoy your life and be good to each other because at the end of the day, you're going to die.
And I remember on the history DVD, them talking about how they kind of all felt like they were power slaves because they had this thing, Iron Maiden, that was blowing up, and they were slaves to it. They had to give 9-10 months out of their lives to feed this beast, Iron Maiden. And you kind of see that was the biggest tour they've ever done to date. It's the most shows they've ever done to date. And I think Rod said that was the most they ever put into production today. Even the modern shows, they don't put as much capital and money into the production. That Live After Death tour was the height of Iron Maiden. It's the pinnacle. That's why in the previous episode we gave the album a 10 out of 10. It's because this is it. If you're a fan of Iron Maiden, you have to love the World Slavery Tour. You have to love Powerslave.
It's well deserving of a 10 out of 10.
And we got to relive it in, 2008. And if you didn't get to relive it, I feel bad for you guys. Like, if you didn't get to see that tour, it was, like I said, me and Joe have seen, we saw 2 shows on the Final Frontier tour. We've seen Maiden England tour, which was incredible. We'll probably talk about that in the future. And we've seen the Book of Souls tour here last year. Those two live after dishes. Those 2 Somewhere Back in Time shows are at the top of our list of being favorites.
They're fantastic.
I mean, they're 2 favorite all-time concerts, period. I mean, we've seen other bands. We've seen Megadeth. We've seen,
We've seen Megadeth. We've seen Queensryche. Yeah. We've seen Yes. We've seen Trivium. We've seen Dream Theater. We've seen so many bands.
Maiden blows. It just blows.
The 6 Maiden shows are like head and shoulders above every
Yeah, like when we go see a concert, we say, where does this rank out of our non-Maiden shows? We don't even include them in the discussions.
Yeah, we have to separate. them. Because Maiden's so great, and
obviously we think they're great because they're our favorite bands and we're that passionate about them. So we have a different, perspective than some people out there. But to see a Maiden show is like making a pilgrimage to us. It's almost a spiritual.
Oh, absolutely, it is. Like I talked about earlier in the podcast, and even this one, it's a transcendent experience.
Yeah,
the drive there, just talking about Maiden on the way, just bonding, trying. It almost makes you feel like you're touring with the band when you're doing it because you're going to a new place. You're going to go to get some exotic cuisine somewhere. Matt and I are big sushi fans. We love sushi. We kind of hit up the sushi places,
Might have had sushi today already.
Yeah, we did. Sushi's where it's at, but that's what we do.
How many times we've hung out since that Somewhere Back in Time tour, and I guarantee you 99% of the time that we mentioned something about that Somewhere Back in Time tour.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's been every time almost. I think it's been every single time. Every single time we've been hanging out since we both started listening to Maiden, we talk about Maiden at least once or twice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like all we talk about. We have other passions. We have other things that we like, and maybe on this podcast we'll talk about some of those things. But Maiden is the one thing that has always bonded us together.
Yeah, Maiden is the number one thing. I have to say that.
At least in our adult lives.
Yeah, in our adult lives that I'm passionate about.
I mean, honestly, like, we might not even still be friends if it wasn't for Iron Maiden.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a potential that we could have maybe drifted separately, and
those shows, those concerts, those new albums have gotten us talking. When Book of Souls came out, texted you, about the album, what you thought about it, how excited we were about it, what you thought your favorite song was, what you thought your least favorite song was, what surprised you about the album, everything. We just talk about it all the time.
Something him and I are, I mean, we do have other things in common. We've known each other since
like
5 years old. But
yeah, don't get me wrong, like, Iron Maiden's not like our whole entire lives. We don't just...
But this is,
like I said, the thing that me and Joe have in common. That's why we're doing a podcast about it.
Exactly. And the passion we have is there.
Yes.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I know this was not really a review or, anything in particular. It's just some, like I said, this podcast is called A Matter of Life and Maiden. We're not going to talk about Maiden all the time. We're going to talk about some of our experiences with the band and some of the stuff that we do, in our lives.
Yeah, this was real life here, taking a trip to see Iron Maiden. It was incredible being able to see this when we're back in time too.
Exactly. And then you come home from that show. I know I did. I had just started college. It was my first semester. And talking about it to people
reinvigorates your passion for learning and for Maiden and for life in general. You get that kind of boost to your life. You get that energy. Absolutely. You get that passion to go and learn something new, to listen to something new, to listen to Iron Maiden, to everything. I mean, it just gives you a reason to enjoy life and to live.
That's pretty much where we'll end it there, because that's
a matter of life and Maiden.
It's a matter of life and Maiden, and that's exactly what this is. And thanks for listening to it. Thanks for listening to A Matter of Life and Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. I'm Joe Labriola,
and I'm Matt Wagner.
And guys, until next time. Next time, we're going to talk about Somewhere in Time.
This might be Joe's personal favorite album. No spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers, but we'll talk about the reasons why next time, guys. Hey, take care of yourselves out there.